Good morning.
It is so kind of you all to come today. Thank you for making time to be with us. We've never had a press conference in this room before, and I think I see why. Usually we rent space, but we thought, this is important for our home team and to do it on the home front, so we thought we'll see if we can squeeze in and move the table out of the way and brought some chairs. And maybe it's okay. It feels kind of nice and intimate. And it also shows that we're using our resources wisely. So we're spending money on rental. We're using what we already pay for. How's that?
That's
Good justification. I am bantering a little bit because this is Sylvia Wilson is here, the president of our school board. Hello, Sylvia.
Good morning.
So it's a delight to me that we have members of the school board here. We have members of the Pittsburgh Federation of Teachers here. We have principals and central office administrators here. We have members of the Promise board. We have leaders of the higher ed community and leaders of our urban public school system. We have researchers who helped us think through what we're going to be talking about today. We have funders. And we have good friends of the organization, as well, of course, the incredible team of the Pittsburgh Promise that is surrounding us in this room, and members of the media. So, friends, we consider you to be important partners in this work, and delighted that you all could take some time to be here this morning. I'm going to talk for just a few minutes to kind of introduce this new initiative. Then I'm going to make some room for Drs. Hamlet, Bullock, and Mellon to say a few brief words. And then after that, we can do interviews with anybody who wishes to do an interview. So from the very beginning of the life of the Pittsburgh Promise, our mission had the child in the center. We have never forgotten that. Yes, we are concerned about the quality of urban public education in the city and do all that we can to ensure that it's delivering excellent education for all of our kids. And also simultaneously, we're concerned about and committed to ensuring that all of our kids in all of our neighborhoods have decent places to live that are safe and where they can experience prosperity. And we're concerned about our neighborhoods and our schools precisely because of our commitment to kids. Our commitment to kids is the air that flows through our lungs, it's the blood that goes through our veins, and it's the fire in our belly. That was the case when we started, it is today, and it will continue to be the case. It's not an overstatement to say that education is a justice issue. Everything depends on education, whether it is employability, whether it is economic mobility, or whether it's health, family, and stability, and a whole bunch of other abilities that I could have inserted in this conversation. Dr. King, way back when, made the following statement. He said, "The moral arc of the universe is long and it bends toward justice." Then President Obama added to that, "But it doesn't bend on its own." We agree, which is precisely why our mission at the Promise has been to do all that we can and to bring as many friends as possible to join us in leaning on that arc to increase and accelerate its bent toward justice. So, what have we done so far? This is public information, but just briefly to set the stage. In the last 11 years that we've been around, we have had the privilege of investing about $140 million in 9,503 kids. They have gone to 138 schools. We've seen high school graduation rates in the city go from 63% to 80%. The post-secondary persistence rate, that is the rate at which kids stay in school, is hovering in the high 70s, which is right at, if not a couple of points ahead of the rest of the country. And we've graduated so far more than 3,200 kids. The majority of them are working in buildings downtown with the companies that have invested in the Promise. So we celebrate that. Just if you're interested in knowing how our scholarships have gone based on the economic abilities of our kids, 81% of our scholarships have gone to kids who also receive need-based aid from the federal government or the state government. About 16% of our scholarships have gone to kids who are not eligible for government aid, but really could use the scholarship solidly, middle-income families, and a very small percentage have gone to families in the city of Pittsburgh who go to Pittsburgh Public Schools who come from higher incomes. Now, like any good organization, we pay close attention to our data, and we try to make decisions that are informed by that data. And we also look at what's happening in other places around the country, what the best practices are in other cities that are moving the needle and transforming the lives of kids. So our data tell us that the Promise usage rate, whoops, I jumped ahead. Our data tell us that the Promise usage rate in certain high schools is very low. And our study of best practices across the country show that investment in coaching at the high school level and in certain colleges ends up transforming that outcome. So in the fall of 2020, this coming fall, we are going to launch a new initiative called Promise Coaches that will place coaches at Carrick High School on the south side, Perry High School on the north side, and Malayan's 6 to 12 high school here in the Hill District. And this will be, well, here's what the Promise usage rate at these three high schools was for the class of 2008. 38% of Carrick's graduates used their Promise Scholarship, 18% of Malayan's graduates used their Promise Scholarship, and 11% of Perry graduates used the scholarship. Here's what we promise to do, what we commit ourselves to do over the next 4 years, to increase the Promise usage rates in these schools by 2/3 at Carrick, double it at Malayan's, and triple it at Perry. Those numbers are not, we didn't arrive at those numbers randomly. Those aren't pie in the sky numbers. Our research partners at the University of Pittsburgh at the Learning Research and Development Center, LRDC, helped us do a study of what's happening across the country and what is reasonable for us to project with the kind of investment that we are making. And those are reasonably arrived at with a slight extra push from us, that's our aspiration push. Because, I mean, why the heck not?
Right.
Who among us here would not want to see those kinds of outcomes and better for our own children? So that's what we intend to do over the next 4 years. And our coaches inside the school buildings are going to focus on these 5 things. They're going to help kids figure out what their interests and their skills are, what resources are available to them, whether it's financial or otherwise, what options are ahead of them, whether those options can be a 4-year school, a 2-year school, a trade or technical school, a labor union, straight into the job market, joining the military, starting their own business, help kids figure out what it is that interests them and which pathways can take them there. But it's also important to keep an eye on what's happening in the region's marketplace so that kids can use their skills and their interests, their resources, their pathways to get to a place where they can get a job. And then certainly, while we're at it, why not help them develop some professional skills, some work habits that can help them succeed when they get to the marketplace. That will be the focus of the coaches. This is a 4-way partnership between Pittsburgh Public, Pittsburgh CCAC, Carlo, and the Pittsburgh Promise. So the Pittsburgh Promise will place coaches at, like I said, at 3 high schools, 2 coaches at Malayan's, 2 coaches at Perry, but 4 at Carrick, and that's driven by the size of the enrollment at the schools. I hope you're okay with that, Angel.
Okay.
And the district is opening their doors to allow our coaches to be embedded inside the building, to be there every day, every school day. That's their job. In fact, if they're in this office, they're not doing their jobs. Dr. Hamlet, we're going to make sure that they're annoying the heck out of your staff and working inside those buildings. But it's a partnership also with CCAC and Carlo, because based on what we looked at across the country, those models that are moving the needle have a very formal partnership where the coaching, there's a handoff of coaching from the secondary to the post-secondary, and these 2 institutions, Carlo and CCAC, have demonstrated their willingness to go above and beyond, and they take risks by way of enrollment on our kids like nobody else does. And that sometimes is to their own detriment, because when you enroll the very top of the very top, of course everybody's going to succeed. But when you take risks on kids, sometimes your data is going to be affected by that. And they are nonetheless, by virtue of their mission, whether it's the Sisters of Mercy, I love that name. Your mission is mercy. That's what drives education. And in the case of the community college, their job is to educate the community, without exception. So as a result, because they're taking greater risks on our kids, we're also going to place coaches at their institutions. They will be their employees working for them, but they are dedicated to serve the population of kids that we are helping to move from not eligible to eligible, from not able to get the scholarship to barely able to get it in some cases, where they're still going to be vulnerable and will need the additional supports. They're also going to invest in some technology that will be used to drive services to our population of students. And and this would in no way happen if not for a very substantial investment, $3.9 million investment from the Richard King Mellon Foundation. Without whom this, of course, couldn't happen. Sam, your personal interest in this initiative and your incredible investment in it is why we're going to be able to make and accelerate the difference that we'll be making. Please pass our profound gratitude to your trustees and your colleagues. And it's great of you to be here. So I'm also pleased to introduce my newest colleague who joined our staff on Monday, Amy Yearwood, sitting back there in the corner. Amy just joined us on Monday, and she'll be leading this initiative as our Director of College and Career Success. And Amy spent the last 7 years at a little-known institution in Pittsburgh called Carnegie Mellon University, running their summer learning programs and leading strategic initiatives focused precisely on helping kids. Now, vulnerable enrollment at CMU means something different than vulnerable enrollment at CCAC, but nonetheless, that has been her focus, her own personal story, and she can tell it when she wants to tell it. Also, is partly why we felt like she's absolutely the right candidate for this. Plus, she's a PPS mom. Good to have you here. Okay, so I am going to right now turn the microphone over to Dr. Hamlet, followed by Dr. Bullock, followed by Dr. Mellon, the superintendent of Pittsburgh Public Schools, the president of the Community College of Allegheny County, and the president of Carleton University, after which we can take questions.
Yes, sir. Well, it's an exciting morning. Good morning to all of you, and thank you for being here. I always take an opportunity to give my bosses a shout out before I get started speaking publicly, so I want to acknowledge our president, Ms. Sylvia Wilson, Devin Talafero, and last but not least, Ms. Veronica. So, when the Promise approached us with this idea, it was an immediate and easy yes. Why? This provides equity and opportunity for our students. But also, we want to make sure we be able to access students who are normally don't have the supports in place, but also need additional support, what we call equity. Providing additional support for those in need. Making sure we put our money where our most needy students are, and making sure that they are thriving and surviving and accessing the Promise. So the Promise with this juncture is going to actually meet students in the 9th grade, which is awesome. So if you didn't know the statistics, about 50% of 9th graders drop out of school. So this is a critical juncture that the Pittsburgh Promise will meet our students at. And it's ultra important to make sure that our students at 9th grade and even beyond, as we go further, begin to have a plan in place by the time they get to 9th grade. Have a life plan in place. But also it's our duty as educators in the community to make sure those students are ready to access and be viable citizens so they can take care of us as we retire. So that's important. This program will also help students to do the important work of identifying their own talents and interests and matching them to resources and pathways of employment in our region and beyond. So I want to give a shout out and a huge thank you and a bear hug, a virtual bear hug to R.K. Mellon. Thank you for your support. Obviously, the Pittsburgh Promise, but also CCAC and Carleton University. So thank you for Thank you for doing what you do. Pittsburgh Public Schools will be a better place as a result. So thank you.
Thank you, Dr.
Good morning.
Good morning.
The Community College of Allegheny County has partnered with Pittsburgh Promise since its inception through not only the Promise Extension Program, but through our shared commitment to providing career and transfer education that is both accessible and affordable to the wider community. As part of the Coaches Partnership, the Community College will strengthen our predictive analytics and use the personalized interventions through coaches to provide continued support to the cohort of students who enrolled at CCAC. The Promise Coach Partnership with CCAC will expand and institutionalize a comprehensive academic support and mentoring structure to advance the college completions rate for Promise Extension students and Promise scholars. Together, we are helping to provide resources and interventions to ensure that all students, regardless of background or income, have the tools that they need to succeed. And I also want to extend my thanks and appreciation to R.K. Mellon and the partnership that we've established with Pittsburgh Public Schools and Carrick University for taking on this additional new charge to further advance the work of our future leaders. Thank you very much.
This is really my delight to be here with this group of partners, and my experience in higher education and in community has always been that good things happen when people are really working together and partnering together. So coming into Pittsburgh 7 years ago, I was struck by that in the sense of community. And Carlo has been working in tandem with Pittsburgh Promise since 2008. And more recently, our strong relationship with Community College of Allegheny County to really do joint admission programs to really ease that transition for students that are moving from a community college to a four-year university. Our mission has always been driven about providing access to education to those students who need it. And we continue to do that day in and day out. And I particularly like, Salim, your quote about the issue of education as justice. And we're very much focused on that and providing access and being merciful, but also having high expectations and helping students to have the wraparound services. So we will really build on what you've heard already by really developing and supporting that additional coaching model that we're talking about. I think the part that I'm very excited about is that all that we are hearing about in the importance and relevance of having the predictive analytics that you will need to really intervene very early when you see that a student needs an intervention, so that the wraparound services that are going to be provided by this enhanced program will really make a difference and can really support that. So the outcomes that we look for in terms of increased retention rates, graduation rates, and job placement and outcomes like that will continue to be enhanced. I think for Carlo, we have always been one that has celebrated both our academic excellence, but also providing that access. We're extremely excited about this partnership proposal, and I want to also reiterate and underscore, we could not have done this without the support of R.K. Mellon and the support of the Promise Board and my colleagues in the Pittsburgh Public Schools and CCAC. We look forward to sharing the outcomes when they start to be produced. So thank you again.
It's also convenient, Suzanne, that your last name is Mellon. I'm sure that was a difference maker. So this ends the formal press conference. Of course, we hope that you will not leave, that we have coffee and water, including bubbly water, those who like the sparkly kind. And then some snacks out there. And then I don't want to impose on our guests. If you prefer to step out, and then we can take questions from members in the media, or we can go ahead and take questions. Okay, we'll take questions. Are there any questions?
Where do the coaches come from? Who will they be? Do you hire them?
Yeah. So there'll be eight coaches hired by the Pittsburgh Promise, and a number of coaches hired by CCAC and by Carlo. R.K. Mellon made 3 different grants, one to us and one to each of the other institutions. So we will hire 8. They will be employed by us, deployed by us, report to us, accountable to us, supervised by Amy, but they will be placed inside the 3 high schools for the 4 years.
How will they be trained?
They'll be hired in June, and then we will boot camp them here for the months of June, July, and August. So they will be trained in, of course, all things Promise, but also all things Marketplace, in terms of the Marketplace in Pittsburgh. They will be deeply oriented, take a deep dive into the available resources that are already part of the DHS system or part of the United Way organizational system. They will be trained on the data front. The data that they'll be using is the same data that, the software they'll be using is the same software that high school guidance counselors use, annouce. They'll be trained on the annouce system. It'll be a very intensive 3-month training period, and then they'll be launched at the end of August.
Since this is a pilot program, what type of things are you going to look at to see if this program may extend to other schools or for a longer period of time?
Yeah, for us, the absolute driving force behind it is moving promise utilization rates. And we've set fairly ambitious promise utilization rates at these 3 schools. And if we see that the needle is moving substantially, we're doing this as a proof of concept for the 4-year period. If the proof of concept indeed proves to be effective, then our intention will be to deploy it to every school that needs to move its promise utilization rate. And yet, yes?
Recruitment, it seems to me recruitment would begin in 8th grade. Do you already have a plan for recruitment?
So that's an interesting question. We're not really thinking in terms of recruitment. We're thinking the students who show up in these 3 high schools on day 1 of 9th grade, 100% of them will be our students, but not only the 9th graders, 10th, 11th, and 12th. So of course, we only have 1 year with the 12th graders, but 4 years with the 9th graders. With the exception of Malayans, because Malayans is a 6th through 12th, and there our work will begin with the 6th grade class. So it's the kids who are inside that building on day 1 of the fall semester.
So just so I'm clear, you plan every student meets the criteria for this program will be in it, is that correct?
That's correct.
Any idea how many students that totals?
That there are between the 3 schools right now about 1,500 students
Total?
in total among the 3 schools. Carrick has about 700 right now, and then 3 and some change in each of Perry and Alliance. The exact number we'll find out in the fall when the 9th grade class shows up, when we show up.
For background for the coaches, what are you looking to bring them from an education background? What are you looking for in the coaches?
Yeah, so at minimum, they will each have a bachelor's degree. They also have to have an appreciation for the culture that we are serving, the context in which our work takes place. From my perspective, there's going to be an edge, and I'm saying this publicly right now, there's going to be an edge, an advantage given to graduates of Pittsburgh Public Schools who also received a Pittsburgh Promise scholarship, earned a 4-year degree. They know the system, they know the city. They don't have to be from those 3 schools. They can be from any one of our high schools. But to me, that is the ideal candidate, who doesn't have to be oriented to the context and culture, but they just have to be oriented to the job.
You might have already said this, Liam, but how do you determine, what's the criteria for being accepted into the program?
Yeah, I did not say that because the criteria is this is available to every kid inside the school building, and we're gonna roll it out in a targeted way, beginning from the bottom up.
Well, how do you determine, who?
Oh, that's based on their promised eligibility. So in order to be eligible, again, we're driving promise utilization. That's our lane. We're not counselors, we're not social workers. We are the Pittsburgh Promise. We give scholarships to kids, and we want to see more kids utilize that scholarship. And the promise eligibility is a GPA of 2.5 and attendance of 90%. Some kids, and they have to make both of them. They have to be eligible on both fronts. So lots of kids are eligible based on one or the other. So they might miss attendance but have GPA, or miss GPA but have attendance. The goal is to have both. So the kids who are having a hard time showing up to school, who might we partner with to make sure that they can get to class more often, be in those seats, be absent from those seats less frequently. So that's the criteria. We'll begin with those who are missing promise eligibility, but the service of coaching is available to every child.
This won't just help then your promise numbers, it will help the school district in terms of its attendance numbers.
I mean, frankly, I don't care whose numbers it helps because our focus is on each child. If we move the needle for each child, that's also going to help our corporate CEOs because it's going to create eventually workers who are available for them. It's going to help our real estate agents because it's going to graduate kids who might be able to buy a house from them, the car dealers, and the tax coffers.
You had mentioned $3.9 million investment. Is that the total investment of the new money?
Yeah, so that's the, are you asking, is that what the project will actually cost and is it fully covered? Is that what you're asking, or?
No, I'm asking, you said $2 million for the coaches, but then I noticed you said $3.9 million of an investment. Is that the total new funding?
So $3.9 million from the Richard King Mellon Foundation, $2 million of that for the Pittsburgh Promises work, and then just short of $1 million each for R.K. Mellon and Carlo for their coaching work and their investments in technology. And this is for 4 years. You know, and we also still need to raise a little bit more money because, I mean, the beautiful thing about this, not if, but when we're successful, the demand on our scholarship fund is going to be increased. So that's going to, you know, we need to raise another $3 million or so over and above what we're planning on for scholarships. And that's the price of success. We're determined to do that.
So I'll ask the question, is that what the total program's gonna cost, and you need to raise more money? I think you just answered it.
Sure. Yeah, the total program for the Pittsburgh Promise is $6.2 million. And for the 4 years, because of the added $3+ million in scholarship expense over and above what is already projected. And then their programs are funded for the 4 years. Our program on the coaching side, the actual direct costs for coaching is covered. The related added expense of scholarships we're raising. So before you leave, there's a basket outside the door. Empty your wallets. We also take credit cards. And I should say, and this may be actually of interest to some of you, this new initiative creates about $3 million in new tax credit opportunities. So we have about $3 million in educational improvement tax credits that are created by this initiative, and that may be attractive to the corporate sector. Have we covered all of the bases? For the final question, the restrooms are at the end of the hall, and we have the keys for them. Thank you all so much for being here.
Celine, before you finish, can I do a shout out? First, I'd like to thank you for being dedicated to the Pittsburgh Public Schools. He's been doing it a long time.
Yes.
So let's give him I am a graduate of Carlo University, and I graduated as an adult. So they're also good at helping people change careers. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yeah, thank you all for being here. Stick around and fellowship and enjoy something to eat, and we can have conversation for as long as you wish. Thank you.